Hello Pathways Explorers, it's Jacob here from Camp Kawartha on a beautiful Sunday evening. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, the wind is rippling through the treetops, and it occurs to me to savor nature takes a deliberate act. And I'm reminded of a sommelier. You know, the people that get really good at wine? How do they get to be that way? Well, they study, they practice. They pour themselves a glass of wine, they smell the bouquet, they taste by rolling it on their tongue. They can tell what kind of grapes the wine was made from, perhaps what kind of region it came from, the type of soil. They look at the color and they appreciate wine that much more because they've studied it. I wonder, can we become nature sommeliers? By practicing all of our senses, can we get to be more connected to nature? Here's the thing, you know, the average child spends something like 7 hours and 45 minutes in front of a glowing screen. More so because of the pandemic. And what senses are activated? Well, their sense of sight. But remember, everything's squeezed in 2 dimensions, hermetically sealed behind a screen. In essence, they're looking at the world through a small window. And the sound, too, comes from this tiny computer box or their handheld device. Go outside and begin to open up all your senses, and the natural world become flooding in. You know, I think as human beings, we yearn to belong. We yearn to connect. We connect to our partners, to our families, to our friends, to our community. But I think too, we yearn to belong to nature. And when we feel a sense of connectedness to nature, we feel less alone. We feel more connected to the life systems that sustain us. Perhaps these days, kids are feeling more lonely because they're missing that part. So let's see if we can open up their senses and have them more fulsomely connect to the natural world so they feel a sense of belonging to this beautiful planet that we all share. How can we do that? Well, a whole series of activities. First of all, rub your fingertips. Do you feel those ridges? Crammed in the tips of your fingers are Mesner's corpuscles. They're little nerve endings. You have 10,000 of them packed into a square centimeter. You were born to feel and touch, pressure, heat. You can sense pain. At the same time, you have surround sound. That's right, your pinnae, or your ears, can pick up sounds from all directions, and you can isolate which direction the sound is coming from. Take a deep smell. The latest research suggests that we can smell close to 1 billion different distinctive odors. How amazing is that? And if you smell fresh baked bread, perhaps you're transported back to the time your grandparents made bread for you, because sense of smell is one of the most evocative senses connected to our memory. And what about the sense of taste? Just rub your tongue along the roof of your mouth. In your tongue are packed all these taste sensors, like little volcanoes, and you can taste bitter, sweet, sour, salty, savory. If we activate all of those, we're going to feel more connected to nature. Let's start with sight. You were born with the eyes of a predator. That's right, your eyes are located in front of your head. You can see depth in 3 dimensions. So let's start off with a simple one where we can isolate a part of nature. This is an old photography trick where you take one hand, put your thumb down, switch your hand the other way, put your thumb up. You've created a little frame. And by just isolating pieces of nature, you begin to see it and appreciate it in a new way. What you can do, hang a string up somewhere, maybe in the schoolyard, maybe in your backyard, and get the kids to make a little cardboard frame, or in this case, I got one from the dollar store. Just hang it up. Take a look and see if you can find a beautiful view and give it a name. I'm gonna call this Lilac Village because there's lots of lilacs out there. You can see the blue sky juxtaposed against all those textures of green. You can also just glue some popsicle sticks together. And there, put it on a beautiful spot in the ground. Here's some yellow clover. And just by isolating it, the yellow clover pops. How cool is that? I'll tell you a quick story as we walk. There's a beautiful overlook that I like to go to. Many years ago, I took my son on my back, my little daughter in hand, and we climbed to the top of this big hill overlooking a lake. Sunlight was glinting on the water. It was beautiful and I was mesmerized. But what were my kids doing? They were hunkering down and looking at the ants going by their feet. Kids, especially younger kids, focus on the microenvironment. So let's create a little micro trail for them. Welcome, welcome to my micro trail. I'm going to start off right here. I took a tongue depressor, or it could be a popsicle stick, or it could even just be a twig. Got some yarn, and there, I created a little trail. And I have some points of interest. The first point of interest is yarrow. Yarrow's got these finely cut leaves, and that used to be known as the soldier's plant, because if you were injured, you could take a little bit of this, you'd even chew it up, and then put it in your cut, and it's like an antiseptic. If you smell yarrow, it has that medicinal smell. Moving along, I came across this great rock that has a few fossils in it, and with my magnifying glass, I can see it up close. And then I went over here to this piece of granite, one of the oldest rocks, maybe 1 billion years old. It's got feldspar, it's got mica, and it's got quartz in it. And up we go to the birch tree with those little lenticels, those lines. It's just such a lovely color. And I love the birch leaves with their slightly serrated edge. Over here takes me to a dandelion that's just gone to seed. And people sometimes diss dandelions, but they're beautiful splashes of sunshine on the lawn, and pollinators love them. But when it goes to seed, they have these little tiny plumes attached, and they float on the wind, and it's just beautiful to see them dance on the wind. Over here I went to dogwood because I love the color of the bark of dogwood. So there, that's the end of my little micro trail. Another thing that I do is I have a little digital microscope. This is a feather that I found. And I could put a piece of grass in there. It's amazing the textures, the colors that you see when you have a microscope. It's just attached and all the kids can take a look. There's just a little tiny piece of grass. So, see if you can invest in a digital microscope. Another thing I love to do, in the springtime especially, is the Green Sheen Challenge. Sometimes when we look at the natural world, we just see a wall of green. And we don't think that each bit of that green is made up of trees, of plants, of shrubs. But when we really tune in our eye, we can start to notice differences, like the color of the white pine versus the color of the cedar versus the color of the lilac leaves. So to help you appreciate the many, many varieties of green, I've created this Green Sheen color palette. What you do is you take it out, very gently, carefully, harvest a little something. In this case, just a piece of grass, and see what green does it match. Does it match that? Does it match that? Biscay green, herbal green, willow, pastoral. We can detect over 3 million distinct shades. We just found a tiny green insect. I'm not sure what he is, but we were talking about the different shades of green. Well, it's not just plants. Insects too have a variety of different colors. Think of a grasshopper, think of a praying mantis, think of a cricket. And we'll let him go. What can you discover? Have you ever thought about how well an eagle can see? Here's an activity to appreciate just how acute and how well an eagle can focus in on things. Take a piece of thread, yellow or red, tie it to a trunk of a tree, and then begin walking backwards. Continue walking backwards until you can't quite see the thread anymore. Let's say you can just make it out at 50 meters. Remember this, an eagle can see 10 times better than we can. So in other words, they could see it at 500 meters. Wow. So when they're floating on a thermal, their eyes can see a mouse scurrying down below or a rabbit. Amazing. You ever stop and thought about why animals are colored the way they are? A lot of them are camouflaged, and they're camouflaged so they can hide. You think about a fox. Its dun-colored coat mixes in really well with grasses, which is where it loves to hunt. And last time we were talking about countershading, how objects appear darker on the bottom and lighter on top. So animals compensate by being darker on top and lighter on the bottom to break up their form. So one thing you can do is you can cut out some pictures from magazines and laminate them and just hide them in places where they'll disappear. So Jessica, I've hidden a few camouflage animals here. Can you see them? Somewhere around.
Very well camouflaged.
Yeah.
You're not spotting them right away. Oh, I think I see. Hey.
Good eye. Huh? So there's a fox. You saw that. What about over there? Anything more?
Oh, a little field mouse hiding in the grass.
Little deer mouse there.
Deer mouse.
And what about over there?
Oh, under this tree, spotted a little chipmunk.
Now, the natural world is filled with beauty. To appreciate it, what you could do is do some nature sculpting. I'm very much inspired by the work of Andy Goldsworthy. Andy Goldsworthy is a sculptor from Great Britain, and what he does, he gathers natural materials just using his hands. He creates a beautiful sculpture. His rule is he can't use any tools at all, just his fingers and his hands. He makes something beautiful, and then he lets nature reclaim it, but he takes a picture of it. So let's go and explore some of his work here. This is Andy Goldsworthy. He loves the idea of different colors. So in this case, he's taken leaves of different colors and sorted them, darker to lighter, and pinned them with thorns. Here he's just arranged some dandelions very artfully. In the wintertime, he might take snow and pack it to something. Here he's breathed some icicles together. What can you come up with? And while you're thinking about your nature sculpture, here's some words to consider. You can consider space, texture. Is it rough? Is it smooth? Line, shape, value, form, color. All of those things you can think about when making a nature sculpture. And Jessica, is it true that you made a nature sculpture?
Oh yeah, I did. I spent a little time collecting nature materials, and I started with the mullein, and this is what I created for you, Jacob.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now, one thing we always want to be mindful is what Robin Wall Kimmerer calls the honorable harvest. So whenever we're taking things from nature, we just want to take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and then we want to think about practicing reciprocity. How can we give back? So sometimes what I'll do is I'll lay some sunflower seeds out for the critters to eat, or I'll even plant them, and that way more sunflowers will grow as a way to give back from what we've taken. But Jessica, I love this starburst, and I love the colors. And hey, did you know about mullein? That the pioneer women would sometimes take a piece of mullein and rub it on their cheeks. And when they rubbed it on their cheeks, it would just irritate them a little bit, make them go rosy. So this is a way that they would make their cheeks feel rosy, healthy, natural makeup. Give it a try. The natural world invites us to explore. And here's a couple of simple things you can do to help you explore. I call these exploration dice. On one of them, I have taken all the directions: north, south, east, west, southeast, northwest. Then I have a dice that I just plunk some numbers on, 8, 12, 10. What I do is I roll the dice. First of all, though, we have to figure out where north is. So Jessica, point to north.
Well, let's see, north would be
So she's saying that way, and actually she's right, north is that way. So now we know where north is, we can find the other directions. Never enter smelly washrooms. North, east, south, west. A little way to remember. So I'll take my exploration dice and I'll just give her a little roll. And what does it say, Jessica? It says northwest 6. It'd be a little tough to go northwest 6 because north and west is that way, but we'll give it a try. So what I do is I take my magnifying glass and I go 6 steps to the north and the west. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I hunker down. Now when I hunker down, wherever I am, there's surely something to explore. Here I found leaves that have been eaten. I see some growing cedar. And I can roll again. This time it says southeast 12. So North, south, south, east, 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm right here in the bushes. Wow, I see some vetch growing here. I see a little hole that an animal made. Anyway, what this does, it bounces you around in the landscape in places you might never go to. And kids are always discovering something. It could be a spider's web, it could be a chewed leaf. In the same vein, I love the idea of basement windows. There's so much that goes on under our feet that we don't know about. But one of the ways to reveal the underworld is to lift up a log, a basement window, or a rock. So we're gonna do that. Let's see what we can find underneath. Oh, Jessica, lots of ants.
Oh, look at the black ants.
And here's some pill bugs. Oh, that's a little millipede there. See that?
It's a big millipede.
Yeah, and then we got more millipedes here. They like to curl up when there's danger. So these are carpenter ants. Just look at all this life on the log.
Oh, giant ants.
Normally we wouldn't see these because they're hidden from view, but that's where the basement window comes. But I always say we lift up the window, we should close it again when we're done, right? So let's do that. Let's close it again. Look at how everything's camouflaged, that little millipede. Beautiful. What will you find when you open a basement window? All right. What about our sense of hearing, Jessica?
Well, we need it.
There's so many sounds that go on around us, and we don't often pay attention to sounds in nature. One way to do that is focused hearing. You take your two hands, you cup them together, you put them behind your ears and push forward. You can hear 10 times better this way. If you just stand and really focus on the sounds you hear, you'd be amazed. I was hearing a great crested flycatcher. Reet! Reet! One thing you can do is create a sound map. What happens there, you get a piece of paper and some colorful markers, and you just really focus carefully on the different sounds that are around you. So for example here, earlier on, I saw a chickadee, and the chickadee was singing over there. Sweetie. I heard a seagull, and I was listening to the wind. I heard the cluck of a chipmunk. Chip, chip, chip. And a squirrel chattering. So what you do, you get a piece of paper, and whatever direction you hear the sound in, you do a little drawing of the sound and put it on your sound map. And that way you can keep a record of all the cool things you're hearing. If you're ambitious, you can try Jacob's patented handy dandy sound catchers. That's right, made out of cardboard. Behind your ears and push forward, and I can hear a lot better. Oh, one of my favorite words, Jessica. Cethericism. Can you say that? Cethericism?
Cethericism.
What that means, sound of the wind through the trees and the leaves. Some people are so good that just by closing their eyes and listening to the way the sound sort of plucks the leaves, they can kind of tell what tree it is. Like white pine makes a whooshing sound. Trembling aspen makes more of a shuddering sound. Different trees make different sounds. So really listen and see if you can become a cethericist and appreciate those tree sounds. One of the most important ways to remember the different calls and sounds of birds and animals is something they call mnemonics. You know, it's hard to capture the different tones and sounds, but if you put it to a saying, that helps you remember. So I'll give you an example, this one. You might recognize that as a morning dove. How would you remember that? Well, I have a little saying that says, "There's nothing to do." Yeah, simple way to remember. Or what about cardinal? Cheer, cheer, party, 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 party. Or the meadowlark. Spring of the year. Or the rufous-sided tui. Drink your tea, drink your At the end of this video, I will give you a chart of some of those different sayings that will help you remember those different bird sounds. And once you start tuning in, you'll get to recognize what kind of birds are in the forest, even though you didn't see them, just by hearing them. And that helps us to appreciate the natural world more when we start to tune in to the soundscape. And each season has its own lovely soundscape. Well, here we are in Camp Kawartha's permaculture garden. And I took you here because it's a great place to practice our sense of smell. Now, the natural world is filled with all kinds of beautiful odors. It just takes a bit of focusing. And one easy way to make your sense of smell, to enhance it, is to take a sponge and wet it. And just wet your upper lip. What that does, it creates moistness, and then you smell, and whatever scents go into your olfactory bulb and then connect with your brain. There are so many cool smells out there. One thing I like to do is just a little rub and sniff. So you can walk along the trail or even the schoolyard and pick up various things and just rub them and smell. In this case, there's some sage here. This is wonderful. This is a Maggie plant that we use to make, or known as lovage. It has a smell that's a lot like celery. Over here we've got creeping thyme. It too has a nice smell. So I encourage you, if you're an educator or a parent, to create a bit of a sensory garden and just pick those plants which have a nice smell and a nice texture. You can even create your own smell cocktail. How do you do that? Well, you harvest just a little bit from here, a little bit from there. You'd be amazed at how each evergreen smells differently. Cedar smells differently from pine, which smells differently from hemlock, which smells differently from fir. And see if you can get to recognize those different smells. Over here, Jessica, I believe there's anise, which is a beautiful smell. Lemon balm, we're gonna put a few of those in here. There's some anise. Why, one of my favorite things too is just to put in some fresh earth, because the soil has a gorgeous smell to it. And farmers can tell you if the soil is healthy just by smelling. You know what I'm gonna call this? I'm gonna call this Naturoma. Smells of nature. See if you can create a beautiful smell cocktail. You ever thought about just how well a fox or a dog can smell? They have a much bigger, darker olfactory bulb than we do. They can smell 10,000 times better than we humans can. So in other words, if we took a whiff of mac and cheese, a fox might be able to say, okay, a mac and cheese made out of Kawartha cheese, made out of yesterday's milk, made with by Aunt Marge 2 days ago. They just are able to focus in on all the smells. To give kids a little bit of a hint about how dogs and foxes follow scent trails, because they'll know if a rabbit was hopping around and could just follow its scent. You can take lemon extract or mint extract and just drizzle a bit on the ground, a few drops, and have kids follow the scent trail. And maybe you could hide a mint at the very end of it. These are pretty strong extracts. And when kids get down to smell, they can definitely smell the extract. So it might be a fun way for them to appreciate what it's like to be a fox. We were talking at the very beginning about Mesner's corpuscles and our ability to touch and to feel pressure, to feel heat, to feel pain. Rubbing different things in nature helps you to understand there's just so much texture out there, from smooth to rough. A simple way you can do that is take a pillowcase or even a sock, just put some natural objects in it and get kids to reach their hands in there, and just by using their sense of touch, can they figure out what it is? Jessica, what is, oh, a bone.
Oh.
This one feels kind of prickly. I wonder what that is. Oh.
Oh, can I try?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's see.
Jessica's
Oh,
reaching to the mystery bin. No scorpions or
think-
porcupines in there.
No tricks allowed. I think I feel some birch bark.
Yeah, good for you.
Yes.
And yeah, you can put rocks in there, whatever, nothing too sharp. I also have a touch scavenger wheel with different textures. And again, if you find it, you can just clip it on. You know, something soft, something hard, something rough, something wet, something furry. See if you can do that, just to appreciate the different textures in the natural world. All right, we're gonna end it off by talking a little bit about taste. That's a bit problematic because you don't want kids just grabbing plants and shoving them into their mouths willy-nilly. So be really careful about that and only ever let them eat something you know is safe. But there are a few things in Ontario that are sure and safe. One thing I love making is pine and cedar tea. You know, pine, the white pine, comes in clusters of 5 needles. And you remember, white has 5 letters, 5 needles. So a little white strip at the bottom of the needle, which is why it's white pine. And cedar is the one that kind of looks like the scales of something. Anyway, grab a handful, put it in boiling water and let it steep for about 5 minutes. And you will make a refreshing, pungent tea. The tea tastes like the forest, and it's full of vitamin C. When the settlers first came, they were beset with scurvy, it's a lack of vitamin C. And First Nations people, other Indigenous people, knew that pine and cedar was rich in vitamin C, so it helped to ward off scurvy. You want to taste, Jessica?
I would love to, thank you. Very delicious. Wow, very strong of cedar. Beautiful.
So in your sensory garden, you can have plants that have different smells, different textures, but also things you can eat and you know are safe to eat. So I hope you get a chance to make yourself a sensory garden. Now I'm going to end off with a little poem that I love by Diane Ackerman. She wrote something all about honoring nature, and perhaps you could say this with your kids sometimes. In the name of the daybreak and the eyelids of the morning and the wayfaring moon and the night when it departs, in the name of the sun and its mirrors and the day that embraces it and the cloud veils drawn over it and the uttermost night and the plants bursting with seed and the crowning seasons of the firefly and the apple, I will honor all life, wherever and whatever form it may dwell, on earth my home, and in the mansions of the stars. Thanks for being with me this evening. Thank you, Jessica.